Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del challenges the status quo, questions everything, and empowers you to return to your core beliefs to make your life better. If you're ready to hear the truth and get your roadmap to the lifestyle you really want, the next hour will change your life. And now, your host, self-made millionaire, national award-winning investor of the year, CEO and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley.
Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. I'm your host, Del Walmsley, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. With me here today for Tell Del is Sorrel Warren. Sorrel is a single-family mentor in the Houston market and has been a member here since 2013. So welcome to the show, Sorrel.
Thank you, Del. Thanks for having me on today.
Since I haven't had you on in a while, why don't we go ahead and share with the audience what you did before you came to Lifestyles and how you decided you wanted to get into something different.
Okay. I was in sales for most of my career. I spent over 30 years in the sales industry. The last 13, I worked at an online travel company, and I clawed my way up the corporate ladder, and was the last probably 6 or 7 years I was actually a vice president. So I wasn't technically doing sales anymore, but it was a huge sales organization. So that's where I spent my career. And in sales, prior to that last company, you have your ups and downs. And so I made a lot of money some years and very little money some years. I actually had a couple of years of almost no money. But anyway, so I was on a good track and making good money and working, and I realized I didn't save well in my youth for retirement, like a lot of young people even today. I didn't think much about it. And I was in my late 40s, early 50s, and realized I had not prepared well at all. So I was getting ready to go full bore into retirement, and I kept hitting a lot of roadblocks with trying to invest in the stock market and 401ks and those things, and I discovered Dave Ramsey. So I became a Dave Ramsey guru. I took his classes, and I was on that plan, and I was actually working toward that. I didn't have a lot of debt at that point, so I was into a fairly new home. I was only in it for about a year, and I had a 15-year loan, and I was planning on paying it off in 6 years, and then follow the Dave Ramsey plan, saving money to buy my first rental in cash. Not knowing anything about rentals except, from Dave Ramsey talking about them. But I thought that would be a good way to build retirement income because I didn't have a lot at that point, even though I was saving aggressively. And so I was on that plan, and one day I hopped in the car to go to lunch, and I heard Lifestyles Unlimited show. And everything started making a lot more sense then. And so I actually was going to go to a restaurant and sit down and have lunch, but I actually picked up a sandwich and went to a park and sit in the car for that hour and listened to the show. And within a week or two, I was at the free workshop, and I joined and that day and went to the 2-day with you.
Well, let me take you way back on that, because you brought up a lot of interesting points, and the first one you brought up way back at the beginning is something I covered yesterday on the radio, and that was this concept of I had some years I made good money, some years I didn't make as much money, some years I had very little money. Share with the audience, if you would, not because I'm particularly focusing on you, but I'm focusing on the concept of what did you think about money at that point, Sorrel? In other words, when you had a year you made a lot of money, did you save part of it? Or when you had years that were tight, what did you do? What did you think? How did you think about money and the fact that it came and went at different intervals throughout early parts of your life?
Well, I have to say that as a young adult, even to maybe a medium adult, I was not real smart with money. So the years I made a lot of money, I didn't save a large part of that for the rainy days that were coming. And I'd been in sales for long enough to know that the rainy days were coming. And so there were some times that I struggled. And so it took me into my 40s before I actually started settling down and kind of getting on a better track. And then right before 9/11, I left a really good job thinking I could make more money, and that company turned out to be a scam. So I quit that job, I still remember it was August 18th, and 3 weeks later is when September 11th happened, 9/11. And so I struggled through the end of 2011 and 2001 and 2002. And that's when I ended up at the travel company and started making really good money, saving aggressively, even saving more than I was allowed to put into my retirement funds at work, and just saving a lot of money because I didn't want to get caught into another one of those down cycles that I'd been in several times in my career.
So I'm just was writing some doodles down here as I'm listening to you, and I'm playing with this as trying to put it into some kind of a conversation that I can use as a class. I wrote down, okay, in the early years, you were living as if the money will always be there. Does that make sense? That you know,
absolutely correct.
There's no sense of I'll ever be without, so I'm just the more I make, the more I have to spend. Is that kind of the thought process?
That's absolutely correct.
Now, a young gentleman like yourself in early ages, what do those guys spend their money on? Because I have to tell you, I'm different. I saved every penny I made because I worked out. I was a bodybuilder. I worked all day long, 12 hours a day in the gym, and then bodybuilded in the morning and night. Had nobody in my life, and I saved all my money. Of course, I lost it all in the stock market. But so I'm not saying I did any better than you did, but the point was I didn't spend any. What did you spend money on at that age?
I'm a social animal. I'm a social creature. I don't drink. I don't party, in the nightclubs, but I do go out. I do lots of things. I've always loved to travel. And so I would go out and I would go with friends and I would just be out all the time. I'm going to different things. I go to events and activities and Topgolf and, it wasn't Topgolf back then, but those kinds of things. I'm never at home, even to this day. So every Friday and Saturday night and, on the weekends, I'm out doing things, and those things cost money. I'm a golfer, so golf is, a very expensive habit. I'm a scuba diver, which is also very expensive.
There you go, scuba diving. That's an
destination.
Yeah, scuba diving is an expensive habit. There you go. We click into the next segment, and let's talk a little bit more about that, and that is, and then it may not be there. What went through your mind when all of a sudden you're like, whoa, it may not be there anymore?
It was panic, actually, especially in 2002. It was panic because I didn't save well. I couldn't, the economy was bad after 9/11. I couldn't get a real job like I had before. So I was doing just bad jobs and crappy jobs for quite a while. And so then I sold my house. I sold my car. I got a roommate. It was like I was in college all over again. I was living the life of a 18, 19-year-old again, and I was in my late 40s at that point, or early 40s, I guess, maybe, whatever year it was. But I was, and so that's when it hit me that I needed to save. It took me 20 years to catch up with what you did at the beginning. I saved a lot of money during that time period. After I got a real job, I guess I should say. So I struggled until I got the real job, and then I just started saving aggressively.
So it's interesting because I'm taking you through a whiplash here. You start out thinking the money's no problem, it's always going to be there. Boom, kicks you in the teeth. It's not there. It's not going to be there. Now I'm scared to death. Where's the next place to go after you're scared to death? Boom, Dave Ramsey's doorstep, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I just discovered Dave Ramsey probably on the radio also, and was following his plan aggressively, and paying off. I didn't have much other debt. I paid off my car, and then I started paying off my house. And it's so funny when I look back, when I found Lifestyles a few years later, I was on a plan, and had I stayed on the Dave Ramsey plan, today I would still be working at my regular job. I would have paid off my house in May of 2019, and I would now be saving to buy my first rental property, with still the prospect of working many more years to come.
As opposed to I'm retired, I've got 9 rent houses, I've got passive investments in multifamily deals, as opposed to it's all over with, you're retired. Boy, that's quite, when you look at it that way and you say, this is what could have happened, this is what did happen, it really makes a big difference. We're going to take a short break, Sorrel, and when we come back, let's pick up with what you thought when you went to your first couple of Lifestyles events, because I know now you hold the events, so it'd be interesting to see what you thought when you went to your first ones. We'll take a short break. Be right back with Sorrel Warren, single-family mentor in the Houston area, and the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
Del Walmsley talks about finding that one thing that made sense for the lifestyle.
I looked at franchises. I looked at multi-level marketing. I looked at everything in the world. But nothing made as much sense as buying one simple little rental property.
Real estate is your best option. Real estate makes sense. Lifestyles Unlimited will teach you how to buy your first rental property. Join our live online free workshop to find out more. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. If you're just tuning in with us today, we've got Sorrel Warren here, which is a single-family mentor out of the Houston market. And Sorrel was sharing his story about how he, as a young lad, worked hard, made a lot of money, then spent a lot of money, and then lost his job and had some tough times, and then got another good job, started saving money, and got involved with Dave Ramsey and became conservative and saved a lot of money, and then realized at some point, and by the way, Sorrel, what made you realize, I guess you said you listened to the radio show, what made you realize that what you were doing wasn't getting you there, even though you were really into it?
I had a couple of slaps of reality, I guess I would call it, in that I was working hard to catch up in my retirement, and I turned 50, and I was back to where I was making well above average income at that point. But and so I was saving aggressively inside my company retirement plan. And then I got a call from HR one day, and they told me that, well, before that, I found out I could not contribute to a Roth IRA because I made too much money. And I'm thinking, what do you mean I make too much money to save for retirement? And that didn't make any sense to me, so I had to stop that plan. And then the following year, my company told me that I contributed. There was some term I was not overcompensated. There was some term they used, and because of that, and especially being in the management side of the company, I'm saving the maximum, but they knocked me down from 15% down to 8% or something, which is the company average, because I was highly compensated. That's what the term was. Mm-hmm. And so I kept running into these roadblocks, and then a year or two later, even though I had cut down my contribution to the 401k, they actually gave me money back, because even though I had contributed what they told me I could, the company average had dropped. So as I'm approaching tax season that year, they handed me back a check for several $1,000s because I still had over-contributed based on the company average. So those are the roadblocks I kept running into, even though I was trying to catch up.
Yeah, what's happening there, Sorrel, is that the IRS does not want the executive officers of a company to be able to load up because they're getting paid highly compensated fees. So let's say I make $1 million a year and you can put away 10% and I can put away 10%. Well, 10% for you, might be, if you make $50,000 a year, $5,000. For 10% for me is $100,000. And it's just, in the eyes of the IRS, just too unfair of a situation for these highly compensated people to get the same percentage. So what they do is they bring you back down, because highly compensated people don't need the money to live on. They have plenty of money to save. So you're right, and I haven't heard about that in a long time. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody getting hit for that. But that's true. I know it's out there because it was that way for me as the owner of a company. I couldn't do it. So it's an interesting concept. All right, very good. So you found out that some of the thought processes weren't working as well as you thought. They weren't going as quickly as you thought. And then you, bumped into my radio show?
I did. I was on the Dave Ramsey plan, and one day I heard the radio. It wasn't you. It was another host, but I heard the radio program, and they started talking about the 5 ways you make money and tax deferments and all that. And I had the one way to make money, and I'd already gone through the 2008 crash, and it dropped a lot. I didn't take it out, so I wrote it back up again. But 3 years later, I was back where I was prior to 2008. So I'd already been on that roller coaster, and so I started listening to this. And I was already familiar with a little bit of real estate. I'd never been to some of the other, you roll off that list of all the other real estate gurus, and I hadn't been to any of those, but I knew of real estate investing. And I was aiming to do it the Dave Ramsey way. And this just sounded like a much better way to do it from that radio program. That one day I heard it.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you did hear it. What did you come to first? What kind of event was your first event?
The first thing I went to was the free workshop. And I know a lot of people that you talk about on the radio and people I've met in my role here as a mentor, they listen for months or sometimes years before they take any action. But I heard the radio program that day. I got back to my office and logged on, and I was signed up for the very next free workshop within a week or two.
Now, what did you think when you rolled into that free workshop? Because it's funny, because you actually give those now for the case studies. You give them now. What did you think when you first came in?
The first thing I thought was, I was more used to a very structured business environment, and I walked in, and the guy who was presenting the free workshop walked up in shorts and a T-shirt and flip-flops, and I'm thinking, what kind of place is this?
That had to be Kim McLean. It had to be. Oh, that's funny.
No, it was a guy named Trent. I can't remember his last name.
Oh, Trent, yes. Trent was the same way.
Yeah.
Shorts and flip-flops all the time. You're right.
Yep. And so but then I started listening to him talk, and he was, probably 20 years younger than me, and I started listening to him talk, and I'm thinking, well, this is making a whole lot of sense. And so like I said, I was one of the first ones back at the table to sign up as soon as the presentation finished.
You're in the back of the room, sign up and get out your flip-flops. There you go. All right, so you came to that. Now you go to the 2-day. I assume the 2-day was with me at that time, huh?
It was, yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about the aha moments. Let's talk about day one. You've been out there. You said you knew some ideas. You had some ideas about real estate investing and so forth. But what really hit you on day one that the light bulb went off and you went home and go, oh, my gosh, this is what I was missing?
Well, the first thing was the reliability of real estate investing and the income that it produces. And it's not as subject to the whims of the stock market. Because one of my clearest thoughts, even before the 2008, was, and I don't remember which pope it was, but a pope was shot in Europe and in Italy, I'm assuming, I don't know, back in the 70s or 80s or something. And I don't think I was even invested in the market at the time, but the stock market dropped a lot. And I'm thinking, what does the Pope being shot in Italy have to do with the stock market in, America? And that thought kind of, festered with me for decades, I guess. And I started hearing, gentlemen up on the stage talking about real estate and the reliability of it. And you have a tenant in, and that tenant continues to pay. People have to live somewhere. And so all that stuff just hit me that, this is a better way. And then when he went over the 5 ways you make money in real estate versus the 1 way you make money in the stock market, at that moment, I'm sorry, this is during the 2-day. This is what got me into it. But during the 2-day, you talked about all this and went over, how reliable, investing in real estate is. And you said a phrase that I remember. You said that real estate is very forgiving. And the stock market is not forgiving. And so I was sold at that moment. I was ready to sign up, probably midway through the first day.
So what did you think about, let's see here, I'm trying to think what would be interesting to you from where you came from. I guess it's pretty straightforward on the first day. Most people are surprised about the tax advantages, but we haven't brought those up yet. So it looks like we're going to have to go to break here anyway. We'll take a short break, be right back with Sorrel Warren, single-family mentor for Houston, and the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. With me here today is Sorrel Warren, and he is the multifamily mentor for the Houston market. And Sorrel, as we come back here, let's talk about what aha moments you got out of the second day of the 2-day.
Right. The big thing I got out of that was the ability to invest in multifamily as a passive investor, and then still have your money grow and even double every 2 to 3 years. And that was huge to me. That was part of the reason I joined, but it wasn't. That wasn't going to be my focus. I probably had enough money, or I'm looking back. Even then, I thought I probably had enough money. Now, looking back, I know I had enough money to go straight to multifamily. But I was in my late 50s by that point, and I was ready to stop working. I had worked for 60 hours a week for most of my life, and so I was ready to stop working. And then I focused more on, I started focusing on the single-family homes to get that cash flow generated to replace my expenses so that I could move toward retirement. Now, by the time I got to retirement, I was doing single family and I had my first multifamily passive. But my primary goal was leaving the 2-day was to start single family investing.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Yesterday, I was bringing up the point about I retired in 2.5 years, and I said when I wrote my first book, it was I said you could retire in 5 to 7 years, and now in our manual, we've changed it to 3 to 5 years because people have I guess we've learned so much more than what we knew back when I first wrote the book, and we have people who have more money, so it's easier to get there quicker for some people. What was your thought process when you first started buying the houses? Were you conceiving a 2 to 3 year retirement because you retired 3.5 years or whatever right after you started with us? What was your perception? What was your plan?
My goal was to retire in 5 years. And then I was able to do it in 3.5. But the goal was 5 years when I actually joined.
Now, when you think about that, there was no retirement in sight. And now out of nowhere, you come out of the Dave Ramsey program, and out of nowhere, someone's telling you 5 years. That had to seem like a revelation, huh?
It was not only a revelation. It was, is this even possible? And so I went into it like a lot of members do with a ton of skepticism. But I thought, okay, I'm going to invest in a membership, but if I buy a house, I will own a house. And I thought if all goes horribly wrong, I will own a rent house. The skepticism I went into it with. But it's not like I'm giving money to, some scam or something out there. I would own a piece of real estate. And so I decided I was going to do that. I decided very quickly because I signed up at the free workshop. I went to the 2-day. I joined immediately at the challenge level, same day of the 2-day. And so I didn't hesitate to join. I just still had the skepticism even with joining.
I understand. Tony Robbins has this saying. He says that action occurs when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. So obviously your pain of staying the same was so great that you had to move, even if it's a little scary to move forward. So you did that and you went out and, wow, you moved right through like 9 houses. Did you see or feel momentum? Explain to people how the first one is the hardest. I mean, now that you're a mentor, you tell this to people every day, I'm sure, but the first one is so difficult, and then what happens?
The first one is difficult, and it was even more difficult for me. It probably took me a little longer to get started than it should have, because once I got in, I'm sure you've seen those cartoons with the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder. Mm-hmm. With the financial problems I'd had, especially in 2001, 2002 time, and struggling to get back, and I was making good money and I was doing well, to have 2 years of Dave Ramsey, no debt, no debt, no debt, beaten into me. And I get here, and now we're talking about leverage and going out and buying all these properties with mortgages, and I was kind of freaking out. And so I had you on one shoulder and Dave Ramsey on the other shoulder.
I was just going to say that I could see the two of us, me screaming leverage and him screaming debt. I could see it right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I sit down and made a spreadsheet. And the path I was on with Dave Ramsey, I knew, that's why I said I would have paid off my mortgage, still been working in May of last year. I had that spreadsheet in 2013 that showed me that path. And then with your path, I'm thinking I can take, because I had saved some money, and I could take some and buy this first house. I figured I could probably buy 3 houses at that time. And then I'm thinking, well, those will pay, and then I can keep saving. And so I had the path for 5 years. And so I'm thinking, and so when I was doing the Dave Ramsey plan, I was going to work for another 13 years until I was 70 years old.
Woo.
Even with buying rent houses the Dave Ramsey way, because it would take me that long to save and buy each one in cash. And so I went from, 5 years versus 13 years, and it turned out it was even quicker than the 5 years.
Holy smokes, that's unbelievable. That is. So let's talk about the momentum. One was hard. Was that just psychologically, or was it just technically hard, or what happened? And then how did the acceleration occur that you ended up with 9 of them? Boom, 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 boom.
Well, I found my first house on a road trip. And for the people who are not members, some of the members went at certain membership levels, get to go out and look at houses with mentors and with realtors and with other vendors. And I walked into a house that was disgusting. I mean, the ceiling had fallen in the bathroom from roof leaks, and there were holes in the walls, and pretty much anything. This was a foreclosure, a HUD home, and anything that can go wrong with this house had gone wrong. Just years of neglect and even looks like abuse by the people who were about to be foreclosed on, likely. And I'm thinking, nope, don't want that. And pretty much no one on the road trip was interested. And the realtor is talking about the property, and the mentor is going over the numbers, or maybe vice versa. And so I'm talking to the mentor at the time, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this makes sense. And in my mind, you'd buy a house that looks like the house I was living in, and you'd rent that to a nice family. And I wasn't familiar with rehab at that stage. And so, but anyway, I made the decision to move forward reluctantly and started the rehab process, and everything worked fine. I started the marketing just exactly like you taught it in the 2-day. And before that rehab was even finished, I had a signed lease.
Excellent. So coming out of that experience, what was your feelings then?
I know it works. The numbers, I started getting I got my first rent check, and I had a $570 cash flow. This is back in late 2013, so the numbers are not quite the same today. But, and I realized that check I got, and I paid my mortgage, and I had the $570-something left over. That was more toward my retirement, or tangible money toward my retirement, than the previous 30 years I've been working toward retirement. And I'm thinking, okay, now this makes sense. So within 2 months, I bought 2 at the same time after that.
Okay, so you bought 2 more now. Things are clicking along. Where did you keep getting the money? Because you said you thought you only had enough money for 3 properties. You've got 3. Where'd you get more money?
Well, the first thing I did after I did that spreadsheet and realized that I'm going to go with the angel Dell rather than the devil Dave. And so the very first thing I did, probably 3 months into my membership, was to stop my 401k contribution, and so I was now putting probably all my retirement, because I was saving money on the side also. So all of a sudden I had probably $1,200 a month I was saving that now I was putting into this account for real estate. And so that grew my funds even quicker. And then shortly after that is when I was able to take money out of my 401k. And so from the cash I had saved, the monthly contributions I was making, and then slowly pulling money out of my 401k. I worked for a company. Most companies allow you to only take out $50,000 as a loan, or half of that, or whatever. There's some rules that most 401k companies have. But my company, we had a vesting system. So because I'd been there more than 5 years or 10 years or something like that, I could take the money out and just pay the taxes. By that time I was over 59 and a half. So, but I could take it out. I didn't have to pull it out as a loan at the time.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break right now, and as we go to break, I want you to remember, I don't think Dave would be so happy you called him the devil. I think he would want to be called the angel, and I'm the devil. We'll be right back with Sorrel Warren in the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
My friends, how many of you out there right now believe you have a plan? I followed the conventional plan for years, and then the conventional plan blew up in my face. I wonder how many of you can relate to that exact same thing. The real question is, how many of you have actually figured out how to turn that thing around and make it happen?
Do you have a plan? Lifestyles Unlimited has one for you. It's worked for countless others. Retire in 5 years or less. Come learn more. Join us for our live online workshop. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. With me here today is Sorrel Warren, which is the single-family mentor for the Houston market. And Sorrel, as I went to break, I pulled up a little song here. It's called Devil's Dance. It says the song is about the devil who tried to tempt a person to follow him. He tries to bring out your inner and darkest desires. Yep, there we go. There's my song, The Devil to Dance. I've had people bring that up on me before, so I just thought I'd throw that at you. All right, so we're in a situation now where you've got to 9 houses, you've got money. Let's talk about taking the money out of the 9 houses to go to multifamily. That's the next step.
Well, I didn't take all of it out. I still own 8 of those houses.
Okay.
And but I was still saving. I did sell one house. That gave me some more money. I did a couple of cash out refis, and by that time I was pulling money out of my 401k. So I bought my first. While I was still working, I did my first passive multifamily investment in 2015, I believe it was, or probably 2015 or 16. And it was, we didn't go into all the details about how multifamily works, but in 26 months they did a 100% cash out refi, and they handed me all that money back, and I used that to buy two more.
Wow, now think about that, guys. 100% refund in 26 months. That had to change your whole perspective, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, by that point, I knew, I fully understood the program. I knew what to expect. I did a lot of investigation to find that first lead investor, that first property, and it stayed on plan. So it wasn't a surprise to me, but it absolutely worked perfectly.
So what led you to the decision to go ahead and retire?
Well, like I said, that was the goal from day one. I started working when I was 16. Well, I did little odd jobs, mowing lawns and stuff like that. But my first real job, I worked at the Astroworld amusement park here in town, summers as a kid, and I found out that, and my dad worked extremely hard all of his life, well into his 70s, and so my family, my siblings and I, we all grew up with a strong work ethic. We never knew anything about entrepreneurship. I had a W-2 job my entire life, but I worked a lot of hours, and when I worked at that summer job in school, they announced that kids were quitting to enjoy the summer, and did anyone want to work double shifts? So there were days I'd work from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. And so I've been working 60 hours a week. Every place I've ever gone, I've worked a ton of hours. And so by the time I found even Dave Ramsey and then Lifestyles, I was tired of working 60 hours a week, and I couldn't cut back. I didn't want to cut back. Let me rephrase that. I could have cut back. I didn't want to cut back. And it's always served me well. Like I said, I was a vice president of a large company when I retired, but I was tired of working that many hours, so I was ready to retire.
That's hard to walk away from, being the peak of your employment, right? That's the problem about this whole thing is that, you're working yourself to death with no money, and then you get to your peak employment, and then you go, man, now I'm tired and I don't want to do it. When you're really in the point you can make a ton of money, huh?
Yeah, and I was making a lot of money, but then I realized I was paying a lot of taxes, and I was saving a lot of money toward retirement even before I started saving my real estate. So even though I was making a lot of money, I was only living on half of that money anyway. So I didn't need to replace my income. I just needed to replace my expenses plus my fund money.
So we've only got 3 minutes left, and I'd like you to get something in about being a mentor. What do you get out of being a mentor and helping people give back? I mean, people ask me that all the time. I'd like to hear your version.
That's one of the greatest things I've ever done, because when I came to Lifestyles, like I said, I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about real estate investing. And the reason I joined at that upper level is because I wanted the mentorship. And without mentors, I would not be sitting here speaking to you today. They guided me every step of the way and got to where I could retire in 3.5 years. I didn't do this on my own by any means. And so when I got the opportunity to do it, I jumped at it. And, I mean, it is absolutely one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life, is helping other people work toward their financial goals now.
What would you tell somebody sitting out there on the edge right now? You've sat on the couch. Well, actually, you weren't sitting on the couch. You were working in the treadmill, the little mouse running around this little squirrel cage, and you made the leap. What would you tell someone sitting out there right now thinking, man, I don't know, this all seems kind of fake? Just like you said, it's, too good to be true kind of thing.
Well, that's what everybody thinks. Like I said, I went into it with a healthy dose of skepticism. But you get out here, you meet the people, you talk to the people, and I'm one of just 10,000 stories of people, or maybe even more people who've done the exact same thing. They've gotten out here and they've retired. And then there's the people who join Lifestyles and don't take action. And those are even more puzzling to me. If you're sitting at home and you're listening to this and you're thinking, that sounds too good to be true, I'm not going to investigate it. But once you get here, you see it works, you see people go across on case studies, and then you talk to any live event we have, everything's virtual now, but any live event we have, you can talk to at least 50 people who've retired in a short period of time. And when you hear those stories, then it's, take some action, and anyone can do the exact same thing.
I want to thank you for, first of all, believing enough to get in and do it. Secondly, I want to thank you for giving up on Dave Ramsey, because, Dave Ramsey's kind of a cult, and so you took the step out of one cult into this program. And number three, I want to thank you for giving back and helping other people. I've seen you work with people. You're really good with people. You care about people, and that's an important thing. So
thank you.
Thank you very much for being on the program with us. And last, thanks for being on the radio show today. I appreciate you taking your time. For the rest of you out there, think about this. He was going to be working till age 70. Instead, 3.5 years later, he retired. Now, if you would listen to yesterday's radio show, it will blow your mind, because I gave an exact story of how a person would retire in less than 5 years, and it was almost word for word what you said you did. And I did not know you were coming on. I did not know your story would match up directly. But everybody else out there, go get yesterday's podcast and listen to it, and listen to Sorrel, and then you will be able to link up the reality that the system is there, and it does work, and he followed it, and that's how he got the results. For the rest of you out there, remember this. We're not doing this for a little bit of money. We're doing this for a lifestyle. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, teaching you the opposite of everything you've been taught, so you can obtain the results you've never obtained. Join us 7 days a week. Can't get enough? Visit DelOnTheRadio.com to listen to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, access past show podcasts, and join the conversation.
The information and opinions you hear on the Del Walmsley Radio Show are those of the host, Del Walmsley, his guests, and his callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this station, its affiliates, its management, or advertisers. The Del Walmsley Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Del Walmsley Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.